I'm Greg Hunter. Welcome to USAWatchdog.com. With us, one of our favorite guests here on USAWatchdog.com. She's one of the people that if she hasn't been on, fast enough since the last time, people start pinging me to have her back on. She does this. This is the first quarter. Of course, I've given it away, the Solari report. This is very well done. I mean, it just shows you what went on in the first quarter. If you're busy and you want to really know from a money manager's perspective what's really going on, this is the thing you could do. There's also the Solari.com, the website. You can become a subscriber, but this comes with a subscription. It's just very well done. This is all the Trump administration here. There's also graphs. Best performing asset was palladium in the first quarter. I mean, just very well done. Some of the things I want to talk about is this class of civilizations that's in here. Human versus inhuman, and apparently my next guest thinks Donald Trump is very human. So I'm going to bring her on. It's Catherine Austin Fitts. She is of Solari.com, publisher of the Solari Report. Catherine Austin Fitts, thanks for gracing us with your presence today, my dear.
I love doing your show because I get to talk to you.
Well, I want to start with, I know you're a big picture budget person. We're going to talk a lot about the budget today, but I want to start with what just happened in Washington. Now, a lot of people on the internet are saying, oh my gosh, Trump is sold out. He's a New World Order shill. Jared Kushner is, is puppet mastering. So is Ivanka. He's, not been doing what all his base is upset and mad and angry. And I don't see it that way. I see it like, wow, he came in. They should have been a budget there. He, has to, do a budget, to get him to September. That's where his real budget starts. I think he just cut a deal to buy some time. What say you?
Well, Donald Trump came not with a huge mandate. He didn't come in on a landslide. And I always say if a president has an 80% consensus, he can get whatever he wants done. If he has a 40% consensus, then Congress is going to basically hold him hostage, and he's going to have to get everything through the sausage factory. So we needed an extension on the debt limit, so he needed to do things on the budget. And what he got was the deal that could be brokered through the sausage factory. And if you want him to be able to play rougher and negotiate harder, then every one of us needs to go out locally and build a constituency to get that 80% for whatever he's going to do. The big test of Donald Trump and whether he sincerely tries to deliver on his promises is going to be his budget that he publishes this month, the budget that goes into effect for the fiscal 2018 year, which starts on October 1st. He did a budget blueprint in March, which was, I gave him a D+. That was my lowest grade for what he did on the budget blueprint. But the real test will be what he comes out with in May. And he has, the right political thing to do is to kick the can on the interim solution. That's what he did. That's what he had to do. If we don't like it, we need to go create that 80% consensus.
So he did not sell out, as what a lot of people are saying. Oh, he's totally sold out and all that. I look at this 0.7% print in the first quarter for the GDP, and I frankly believe the Atlanta Fed number, the 0.2%, is how much it grew. And I don't think he wanted to risk, a food fight over $2 billion for a border wall, or a couple of billion for, Planned Parenthood, or $300 million for the bankrupt Puerto Rico, which I want to talk about. I just think that's what he did, and evidently you agree that he just needed to buy some time. Is that right?
If I was in his shoes, I would have brokered a solution on the budget, and there would have been compromise, because that's the only budget that's going to get brokered. Otherwise, you shut down the government, and then everybody would be whining that he shut down the government. So, if I were in his shoes, I would have brokered a compromise, and that's what he did. So I don't see this as being a major thing. I see what's in the budget blueprint and what he publishes in the 2000 fiscal 18 budget as to me, that's going to be a very big thing, and that could make or break his presidency.
And when you say about draining the swamp, I mean, one guy can one guy drain this swamp? I mean, the swamp is all of America, isn't it? It's everybody who wants the free stuff, everybody who wants the tax breaks, everybody who wants everything to keep going and print money to infinity and don't bother me. Isn't that what we're talking about?
Well, if you see the subtitle on the first quarter wrap-up was, "Can a new administration preserve a prosperous economy without more debt, crime, and war?" Theoretically, the answer is yes. I think one of the reasons the Trump administration is getting so frustrated so quickly is they have a vision that it can be done, and they see such a vested interest throughout the country in just same old, same old. So how do you get an aircraft carrier to turn when everybody is dependent on a war economy and they just want, more money? It's the red button problem we've talked about many times on USA Watchdog, Greg. But he needs the American people, one county at a time, to be willing to turn, I call it turn the red button green. So we need to have a vision of a prosperous economy without more debt, crime, and war. And the people making money on, issuing more debt, having more crime and more war, we need to get interested in shifting. So the president right now is getting very, very frustrated because he's in a machinery, and the machinery has no interest in changing. And if you look at what's going on, very dangerously, many of the people who got him elected president are systematically being targeted and taken out of their positions in a way which tells me somebody's coming in for the big move against him.
What do you think that might be? I mean, do you think they'll? I mean, I don't think this Russian collusion story has any legs. As a journalist, it just there's no there. Comey's been working on this since July of 2016.
Well, there's there in this sense. I'm assuming that the president, as a real estate developer in New York, was not stupid enough to avoid getting the rush of Russian money that came in the 90s. So it wouldn't surprise me at all if he did deals on that money. Sort of, that money was rushing through New York and trying to find real estate to go to. So, if he did those deals, ain't nothing wrong with that, in my opinion. But it's not like you can't cook something up because it's, it's complicated financials, and the Department of Justice is very good in cooking complicated finance up into something which it's not.
I mean, just so people know, they came after you for 11 years to try to destroy you.
Right, and it took me 11 years to force them into court and force to prove that they had absolutely nothing. So, Donald Trump doesn't want to spend 11 years and millions of dollars to prove that, but, he might have to. But yeah, no, I agree. The Russian ruse is a ruse. But here's the reality. If you let's just go through all the people who had something to do with making him president who've been targeted or cornered. So we see one guy having to leave Breitbart, and Breitbart being attacked, a lot of effort made to cut off their revenues. We see Alex Jones cut off by Google, and lots of efforts to sort of cut off his revenues. Roger Ailes out at Fox, O'Reilly out at Fox, now Bill Shine out of Fox. So without Fox News, then Department of Justice saying they're going to prosecute Assange. So would Trump be president without Fox News and WikiLeaks? I'm not so sure. We see Bannon absolutely cornered. We see Flynn out. Flynn was his best source of real ground intelligence, probably, and Kellyanne Cohen sort of cornered as well. And now rumors about Hannity. So you go down that list, and it says to me, oh, big one. Jim DeMint out at Heritage, biggest criticism of him, he was helping the administration. So, when Heritage's business is basically to provide platforms and detailed program suggestions to every president, they've done it every year, 4 years since I've been associated, with Washington. And so the idea that they were helping the administration is unthinkable. So if you look across the board at everybody who's been targeted, looks to me like they're trying to take out the whole media effort that got Trump made president in the first place.
My revenues are off, but I'm kind of small potatoes compared to Fox News and Roger Ailes and Bill O'Reilly. But everybody's revenues. Everybody's telling me their revenues. Some people are making $0 or $5 a month. I mean, when they were making 10,000, which is more, which is a lot. For just a small operation. And so, but you think that is a concerted effort. So in other words, this is a plan. This is absolutely a plan.
A bunch of guys sit down and said, okay, we've got to fix this. We've got to look at how this happened, and we've got to reverse engineer it. And what that means is when you come to negotiating the fiscal 2018 budget, Trump's going to have a lot less there behind him. That's why I say if we want to build constituencies for real change, what we need to do, it's interesting, Greg, you and I talked about it. There was a poll right after the election and after the inauguration that showed that 74% of Americans, a high number of Democrats, were on board for doing Make America Great Again. They were ready to go to work on the nuts and bolts. And I think this is a concerted effort to stop that from happening. Because if you get 74% of Democrats and Republicans working together to shift the money, that is a serious threat.
And I think this is what the mainstream press just, it's sickening at the White House Correspondents' Dinner. They're wrapping themselves in the First Amendment. Every one of them colluded with every one of the networks and all their bosses and all the reporters. Almost all of them colluded with the Clinton campaign and offered them help, offered them script approval, offered them to pick sound bites, cheated for them, gave them questions, gave them advice, tried to undermine Donald Trump in the debates. I mean, the list goes on, and it's in, thank you, WikiLeaks, it's documented.
Well, but I think, Greg, it's much more serious than that. In other words, we've had a financial coup. We've seen what I estimate to be $50 trillion illegally, most of it moved, whether on the bailouts or whether on the $11.5 trillion missing from the federal government, as well as other financial frauds. And the corporate media has basically been completely or almost completely ineffective at exploring what that was and why it happened. Our problem politically right now is we have one federal budget, and we are financing two civilizations out of that federal budget, and one of those civilizations we're trying to keep secret. And you know something? It has reached an unbearable point. So that's the question. How do we bring transparency to that second civilization? And it's not going to be the corporate media that does it.
Explain what the second civilization is, so we can put everybody on board with what that is. The first civilization is the one you and I are in. What is the second civilization?
The second civilization was financed by the black budget and a hidden system of finance since World War II, which was originally financed with the booty that we grabbed, at the end of World War II. So we created a black budget and a hidden system of finance, and it's been growing. Think of it this way: the covert economy is literally taken over. And one of the things that happened with 9/11 was there was an effort to move that black budget on budget because it was so dysfunctional to try and have to keep it all secret. So let's look at the $11.5 trillion that's gone missing from the federal government since fiscal 1998.
And just so people know, I mean, Rumsfeld came out on September 10th, 2001, the day before 9/11, and said, we're missing $2 trillion. I mean, there's been some of this stuff been reported. I mean, this is not some crazy idea. I just want people to know that.
Every part of that $11.5 trillion has been documented by federal documents. If you go to Solari.com, on the homepage, I have a new commentary called That Pesky Constitution, and in there I have two links to all the documentation that you'll ever want to find documenting $11.5 trillion. And here's the important thing, Greg. In fiscal 2015, the last reported financial statements for the federal government, the Department of Defense was missing $6.5 trillion. Okay? So that's 10 times their budget. That's how much that is. So, the question in his first budget, and you'll read this when you read the first quarter wrap up, The Clash of Civilizations, is, why doesn't he, as president, just say, we are not going to spend money that has not been appropriated as required by law in the Constitution, and we are going to have audited financial statements, and P.S., where's that $6.5 trillion? My attitude is if the Department of Defense wants a $50 billion increase, then they can go back and find the $50 billion that disappeared during their 2015 budget. Now, let's talk systemically about what's happening on the budget. For many decades now, the American people pay their taxes, and then a portion of the money disappears, okay? And some of it disappears, I believe, using securities fraud that we're liable for. Some of it instead goes through the black budget, and it finances very powerful technology that ends up being owned by private companies. And then we finance wars, and we pay for the wars and send our kids. And you have private investors ending up owning the assets. So now we're being turned to and saying, something, we have $20 trillion of debt, and we can't afford to pay for your health care because there's no money. Well, wait a minute. Where are the assets of the $11.5 trillion that disappeared? Where are all the assets that have been financed with the black budget? Where are all the assets that you picked up on all these wars we financed? So you're putting the debt on our balance sheet, but you're saying the assets aren't on our balance sheet. And that is a very serious structural systemic problem. And that's what's got to be debated out. Now, Trump has been silent on this because he doesn't want to give offense to the military-industrial complex. But the reality is we can't keep financing two civilizations out of one budget, and keep one secret. It's an unbearable situation. So the time has come to bring transparency. And that's why I keep saying the way to solve this is we have to turn the budget, but we have to do it one county at a time. What I would love to see in the links to that commentary, there is a link to Letter to My Congressman, where I wrote my congressman and just said, this is real simple. Have every webmaster at every agency put up all the budget, credit, contract budget, and appropriations by county, and let us sort out what needs to be done. Because if Donald Trump will engage not with the whole population, but the 5 to 10% in any local community who's willing to engage on that basis, that's how you create a constituency and broker the sort of agreements between right and left and Republicans and Democrat that will agree on turning the money. Let me tell you one last funny story. I'm a great fan of Marcy Kaptur, who's a Democratic congresswoman from Ohio. And I did a little fundraiser for her a couple years ago in Ohio, and I was trying to get a friend of mine who's a very serious Republican, and he said, she's a communist, she's a socialist, I'm not going. And I said, just come and listen. And he left the fundraiser, and he says, I'm giving her a huge donation, because what he heard was a Democrat talking about how important it is that we run the money according to the law. So talking about the Federal Reserve, talking about the importance of financial management, talking about bringing the budget back in accordance with the Constitution. We don't have to agree on ideology, but if we can just agree that the money has to be run according to the law, we could extinguish all the student loans in this country. Do you know how great that would be for the economy?
Super. And you were the assistant housing secretary in the Bush 41 administration. Just so if people don't know that, I mean, you have a storied resume. I mean, you are very highly qualified, managed $300 billion. I mean, you're a brilliant woman. You know all about this. But what you're talking about, not running it correctly, like, for example, news that broke about, I think Mnuchin was out saying, the Obama administration took money from Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac to fund Obamacare. That's the kind of stuff you're talking about, and the military budgets, the black budgets, all that kind of stuff.
Right. So basically, we're not running the money according to the law, but we're also running it wasteful. So my favorite story I always tell is when I was at the Department of Housing and Urban Development, I used to, at one point, my company came back in many years later, and we served as financial advisor, and we would regularly find neighborhoods where HUD was paying $250,000 a unit to build new public housing when $50,000 would buy and rehab a single family home in the same 4-block area. And I took the numbers, I took all the different areas where this was happening and where we could get 5 homes for the price of 1. And I took it to the assistant and the person who ran the program, and I said, look how many homes we could get if we would shift the money between this line item, appropriation and this line item. And she looked at me and said, but how would we generate fees for our friends?
No,
so we have an incredible, I can give you hundreds of examples, but we had basically, one of the reasons Donald Trump was elected was what I call a productivity backlash by small business and small farms, which are being put out of business by rules that are hurting the economy. So it's a lose-lose. If you look at what could be done, Greg, if you just said to 3,100 counties, you got the Rotary, the Chamber, the other leaders of the business and farming community, and you got them, and you got them all the numbers on the sources and uses of all federal resources and assets within their county area, and you said, something, let's just re-engineer this to make the GNP in America, the equity in America as positive as possible. Let's just make the pie as big as possible. I'm telling you, the current wealth is 1% of what it could be. That's the little secret that I know, because in the 90s, we built a software tool called Community Wizard that would allow us to map out all the government resources and re-engineer them and simulate the re-engineering of them. And it was amazing to me because this economy is so depressed from the suppression that comes from the lawlessness of running government as a criminal enterprise. You run government as a criminal enterprise, and you want government to just satisfy more and more fees to your friends. After 50 years of fees to your friends and black budget, you have a really, you are shrinking the pie to centralized control. That's what you're doing. but it's shrinking the pie, and it doesn't have to be that way. The big secret is we can make the pie much bigger, particularly with new technology.
And this is what Trump's signing all these executive orders to wipe away all these regulations, and this is why he wants to do the 15% tax for corporate and try to turbocharge. He knows the economy is in trouble. He wants to change the way it's doing. Could he blow up the budget deficit? Mnuchin and Cohen say that, well, as a percentage of the GDP, it's not going to be that big of a deal. And you've said this too, that they could rev the economy.
It's the danger. What Trump is running into is it's real easy to pass things that help the rich, but it's real hard to pass things that help the poor. And the danger you have with the tax package is the tax reform he's proposing makes a lot of sense. The problem is you started through the sausage factory, and the stuff that gets through is, for example, canceling the estate tax, and so the rich get a huge windfall. And you look at everything for the poor, it gets no political support, and there you are.
Well, can we say, instead of saying poor, say the common person? Just the working slug making his 40 or 50 or 60 or whatever he's making a year, and there's nothing wrong with that. I'm a working slug. And so, but isn't that what we're talking about? Just hard-working people who do honest work? That's the poor,
right,
quote unquote?
Well, right now, the economy is government is being used to destroy the economic health of the general population, the working people. If you look at the most productive people within the general population, so small business people, small farmers, et cetera, this economy has been engineered over the last 20 or 30 years to basically rig things so that all of their businesses flow into big corporations and into big enterprise. So again, we've been centralizing, and we've been using government to do it. So if you look at the bailouts, huge windfall for the big guys at the expense of the little guys. So again and again and again, you've been subsidizing corporate America by basically stealing from Main Street. And that has got to be what Trump reverses. And if he doesn't get that reversed, both in regulation, the budget, and in the tax package, you're going to see middle America shut down again.
I mean, the crime is phenomenal. I mean, the stuff that we reportable. HSBC was caught a few years ago laundering money. I mean, Deutsche Bank admitted we rigged the gold market, and a few months later, they paid $157 million fine for rigging the Forex market. I mean, it's just unbelievable. Nobody goes to jail. So these guys have a big, giant past. This is a rape, pillage, steal. Pay a tax, quit your job, take your winnings. I mean, it's unbelievable. It's stunning.
Well, but here's what the economy needs to work, because you're right, we need the economy to work. What the economy needs to work is they need to have faith in the system. To have faith in the system, they need to believe in the rule of law. Regulatory relief is great, that's a beginning. But you need to believe in the rule of law. And what we're watching from Washington, and Trump doesn't control this, he can influence it, he can change it sometimes. But what we're watching is a culture that believes it is above the law. It can kill with impunity. It does not have to obey the law. But here's the problem: it starts with the federal finances being run outside the law. So I was part of a group of people in the first Bush administration who got a law passed requiring the government produce audited financial statements. It has not complied with that law for 20 years straight. So imagine if you had a publicly traded corporation that refused to publish financial statements for 20 years but continued to be allowed to finance in the market and have its stock trade on the exchange. It wouldn't be. It would be shut down. Now, why won't they produce audited financial statements? The reason is because they're not in compliance with the law. And one of the reasons you see a push for a constitutional convention is they want to tear up the Constitution before everybody gets smart enough to say, wait a minute, we want to enforce the Constitution when it comes to with respect to our financial management. Now, what Trump is going to have to do at some point, he's going to have to play hardball. If you look at my commentary, what I'm saying Trump should do is say, something, no agency is going to spend money other than what is envisioned in an appropriation, and all agencies are going to produce financial statements. And not only that, nobody gets a bonus, nobody gets a raise, and nobody gets an increase in appropriations unless it comes out of a portion, $11.5 trillion, that they figure out where it went and get it back.
Trump. People want to say he's stupid and he's some goofy guy. He's not stupid. He is not a goofy guy. He went to Wharton Business School. He understands. You're saying he knows what you know. He understands, at least mostly, and pretty good members of his team, pretty good number of the members of his team, they understand that this money is cuckoo gone, hidden, black budgeted, stolen, whatever you want to call it.
Trump's not stupid. He's very smart. Now, whether he had the full big picture, I don't know. I think he had a lot. I don't think he understood how stuck the system is, and I don't think he understood how easily it would be to get the American people to pull the rug out from under him. So if you look at Putin has an 80% approval rating, which is astonishing given what they've done to him in Russia with the sanctions. So you see the GNP going down, but the population is very clear. We're at war, and Putin's not the problem. We're not pulling the rug out from under. In the United States, the politics works that people's cash flows start to diminish, and they pull their plug out from under the president. So he's caught between a whole world of people who want their check and want him to get them their check, but also fix the corruption. And he can't do both. He's got to do one or the other. So he's getting frustrated.
Could this can't go on forever. The powers that be think this can go on. This cannot go on. Do we run into a risk of some sort of inflection point? And I don't want you to make a prediction. This fall it's going to blow up or whatever. But don't we run into the risk that this could come undone, and it could come undone disorderly and horrible? Don't we run that risk?
This is what we're going to talk about now. It's very important, so I want to say this carefully. I voted for Kasich in the primary, in the Tennessee primary. I didn't vote for Trump. Now, when it came down to the election, I voted for Trump. And the reason I voted for Kasich is because Kasich is very experienced about the budget. He knows the budget in detail, and he understands the politics of what it takes to turn the budget in a way that will make it easy for the establishment to work with him. Okay? Now, Trump doesn't have that knowledge. He doesn't have that experience. And if you look at his style, it's a style that many of the people you have to work with on the budget are uncomfortable with. Okay? So asking Trump to do it puts him in a dangerous position. Now, the reason I voted for Trump is I became completely convinced, Greg, that Washington wasn't listening and that we were at an inflection point, and it would be better to simply destroy the whole system than to let it keep going as it was. So we were better off with the U.S. government completely imploding than continuing on, with another 4 years of a Clinton. So, not only would I vote for Trump, again, I would vote for him. He's done much better than I expected in the first month. I mean, for somebody with no government experience to do as well as he's done is quite extraordinary.
Wow. And coming from you, that's a big deal.
Well, if you read the detail in the first quarter wrap-up, I explain. Now, here's the problem, though. At 70 days when I wrote the wrap-up, I gave him a B-. If you look what happened in April, the guy did, 3 or 4 neocon U-turns that look very bad. Now, the question is, why'd he do them? What's really going on? We're missing a little intelligence there. But the reality is he's getting frustrated and he's getting tired, and what he needs to understand is this is trench warfare and this is spiritual warfare. It's very good for the country if he can succeed. But if you look at what the establishment is up to, Fox News and Heritage being the great examples, they are slowly taking all the pins, all the players off the board so they can come in for a major flip. And I think this summer is going to be a dangerous time. So, don't think this establishment won't try and flip out of Trump into Pence. They will. And it's going to be, if that happens, it's going to be a very unfortunate and dangerous thing to have happen, which is why I think it's very important for each one of us to take responsibility and say, okay, how do we help the president do as much as he can do?
How would they flip Pence into Trump out and Pence in? How would they do that? Just make up some phony crap, impeach him? What would they do?
You take his tax returns and any deals he did with the Russians, and you cook it up into something it's not. And then you take the pedophilia. I think they're afraid to touch the pedophilia stuff, but you threaten him with it, and then you threaten his family. There's a whole series of carrot and sticks you can play. So
and Trump is not a pedophile.
No.
No. They would just make up crap. That's what you're saying.
Well, here's the thing. I have no idea. He's 70 years old, so it's a long history. But if you look at the serious sort of Luciferian pedophiles and the eyes wide shut stuff that goes on, I don't see him as, on board for that stuff. He's much more of a family guy. But that's not to say you can't cook something up, Greg. You can always cook something up.
And about where on the pedophile thing, you said that you'd be surprised if there wasn't a major pedophile break. Could Trump mount a counterattack? Couldn't he just start? Okay, you want to play hard? We're going to play hard, and just play hard.
When they started the impeachment on Bill Clinton, he had the CIA put up the Inspector General's report on CIA drug dealing into South Central LA, because if you looked at how bad it would be for the Democrats, it was going to be much worse for the Republicans, and it was really a nuclear situation. Because what I assume he was saying when he did that is, if you take me down, I'll take you all down. And within 24 hours of putting it up, all the Republicans came out and said, we're going to go through the process, but we're not going to impeach the president.
And don't you think that Trump could mount some, maybe start arresting people for pedophilia? I mean, you said that there's going to be major busts. Cliff High says the same thing, that there's going to be major busts, there's going to be major takedowns in the mainstream media as well.
Here's the thing.
That's what Cliff High, halfpasthuman.com says. You said the same thing. There's going to be a major bust with pedophilia. Talk about that.
I think it's very dangerous for Trump to start a pedophilia scandal, but that's not to say the rest of us can't. So I think if there's one thing that blows the situation wide over, it's a major pedophilia scandal. Now, if you look at what they're doing to kind of shut down the independent media and the people who helped Trump, it looks to me like they're really trying to prevent that from happening. So I see a real serious effort, because it's the one thing that can keep the establishment from really working with each other. So they're going to fight hard to stop it. But I'll tell you, Greg, if the independent media could figure out a way to build up to a real full-blown pedophilia scandal, nothing would be healthier for the system, because that's where we can get an 80% consensus to drain the swamp, and it will show you how bad the swamp is.
So that is their Achilles heel. And these are not just cooking up something bogus in your estimation. You don't have to name names or anything like that, but this is real. There's a lot of Democrats, Republicans, people in the media that are involved in young boy sex and child sex and Luciferian nasty things to children, which is awful.
Here's the job I want. Okay, I want to be part of a truth and reconciliation process where we're the house of good, we're the seal of good, good housekeeping, where people come in, they confess what's in their control file. I give them the seal, you get the good housekeeping seal, and from now on, everybody trusts that this guy's okay because, he's gone through the process and he's free of his control file. What we need to do is take all these folks in Congress, all these business leaders, and help them get free of their control files.
And you think that these files, they're real dirt on these people, real nasty things they've done is what
Control file system is very serious and very real. And you've got a lot of very good people who are, they made one mistake or they made two mistakes. Nobody's perfect. So we've got to find a way to get a majority of the leadership in this country free of the control file, and also free, I used to work for a secretary, used to threaten me, say, I'm looking for your dirty pictures and I'm going to find them. And essentially, we've got to be able to protect people, even if, because I got falsely framed, and it took me 11 years and $6.5 million to prove that they had nothing. It was false. Not everybody has $6.5 million in 11 years to prove that something's false. So you've got to be able to protect leadership, because what does a sovereign government need? It needs a sovereign government leader to be able to say no. And if I'm not allowed to say no because I have a control file or because you're going to kill my kids, how am I going to say no? So we need to put our leadership and the establishment in a position where they can do the lawful thing and they can do the human thing, because they're not afraid.
With that, we're going to stop it right there, Catherine Austin Fitts. Listen, we just glanced over this. This is the first quarter review, Clash of Civilizations. We're talking about the black budget. You talk about the human versus inhuman, Nazis and democratic nations, Nazis. Fake news. There's so much in here we didn't really totally get to, but it's the Solari report at Solari.com. You can become a subscriber. For you YouTube people there, go hit the back button back up in the write-up and go to the USAWatchdog.com site, and after the interview section, I'll put up all the links to Solari.com, her sign-up page, and how you can become a member. It's just really well done, and you get Catherine Austin Fitz's great brain to boot for a very, I think, a very reasonable price. Catherine Austin Fitz, Solari.com, publisher of the Solari Report. Thank you for joining us today on USAWatchdog.com.
Thank you, Greg. You're doing a great job.